Hello Sammy, Dawn here from New Beginnings, my everyday life in rural Cyprus. And I want to thank you first of all for coming here all the way from South Africa and videoing my homestead and olive farm. And from that you made a wonderful video coming round and touring where I live. And I got a good 3-part video filming behind the scenes of you visiting and filming your video. Here's Tizer, the newest of our cats. And now I have some questions for you to share with your viewers. Questions that I think they would love to hear answers of. So the first section, I've written them all down so I remember them. The first section is more about you, and I'm sure that's what most viewers like to know. So the first question is, how long have you lived in South Africa?
So don't believe it or not, I was born in South Africa, and I was born in a place called KZN, Durban, in Addington Hospital. And I grew up there my whole entire life until the age of 23. I then went across to the UK for 2.5 years where I worked and just traveled. And then I went back when I was about 25 to South Africa, and I stayed there until I was 32 and came across to Johannesburg where I am right now. I think I've been here about 14 years, and even though I don't like Johannesburg that well because I love the ocean, this is where I am right now, and I've created such a beautiful homestead here, so it's worked out perfect for me.
The second question is, when did you first ever grow anything? Plus, how did you actually get into gardening? Because for me, I never grew a single thing until I moved to Cyprus to an olive farm. I didn't even grow the most basic of vegetables.
Question 2 is quite funny, yeah. So I was never into gardening. I just remember my stepfather, he used to grow corn, spinach, butternuts and squash in a small little area in our garden. I never actually got involved. I just remember him harvesting tomatoes and squash and corn and that, and then just showing us. So I remember also him prepping the garden with the garden boy, and I never actually got involved. I just ran around, I guess, through the sand and through the little homestead that he had created there. But I do remember my first time seeing someone grow food was my stepfather. He used to also every weekend tell me to water the garden, as well as Tina, my stepsister, and that was our chore on the weekend, was to water the garden. I think that was the closest to gardening that I ever got to. Then when I came back, did I come back? No, I had just finished college, and I had moved into the granny flat my stepfather had built, and I remember getting little containers of herbs. And that's the first time I actually started looking after crops. And I remember growing something called fennel, but I didn't eat it. And I did things like rosemary and basil and thyme, because back then I wanted to become a chef, so I was trying to experiment with herbs. Then when I went overseas and I came back, for a very long time I did not consider gardening or anything. I think it was only in my late 20s when I lived in a flat with a balcony. I got some pots and I grew some tomatoes and a curry tree and a few spinach. And that was basically it. I think I had a herb or two. And then when I came to Joburg, I got into the pots again and I grew things like spinach and tomato. But I wasn't big into it. It wasn't something that I considered actually making a lifestyle out of. And I think it only happened when we bought this property, and I think it was 2021, the summer of 2021, did I actually start prepping my very first raised bed and growing things like tomatoes and spinach and watermelon and a few herbs around that. And that is when it actually became real, because I had the space now. And then from one raised bed, it jumped to 3 raised beds. From 3 raised beds, it was 5. And from 5, it was literally 13 to 14 raised beds that I have today. And I've made it a lifestyle. I love teaching people how to grow it, because if I can grow it, anybody can. And it's just such a beautiful feeling to actually create this kind of feeling in order to harvest what you've put into the ground. It's the best feeling ever. And I just want to show you guys something I just noticed here. See if I can get it. Just give me a second and I'll show you guys what I'm trying to do here. There you go. Look at this fellow. It's a praying mantis, and this one's a gorgeous one. It hovers around here. Let me put him back on the tree. There you go, fella. Gorgeous. So yeah, wasn't really into gardening and that, and now I am. And I thank my father for that, because I think he just imprinted something that I remember as a child, and it has brought me so much happiness.
Question 3. What would be in your dream garden?
Okay, what would be in my dream garden? Wow, Dawn, that is a hard question, but my dream garden homestead would be a food forest. If I had the land, I would definitely create that. If my garden was just a little bit like 2 meters more out, I would have a row of fruit trees. So there's a follower that I really get inspired by, because one day I'm hoping to have that land to create something like that. But he's got acres of land. I'm not asking for acres, I'm just asking for a little bit more land. But he planted a whole bunch of fruit trees when they were young, growing fruits from seeds, and he shows you how he does it. But it's been, I think, 5 years he's had the property, and the trees are lush, they're big. He grows them in the ground, and when you walk through his food forest, you just see beautiful flowers and plants at the bottom, and these beautiful trees full of fruit. So it's very similar to your property. And when I was walking through your property, that is exactly what I was imagining, because on your property you were showing me all the young fruits, that fruit trees that you were growing, from your pomegranates to your peaches to all the other clingstones that you had as small trees there. And I can just envision that they are all big, and you can just walk through it, and there's like a canopy of fruit trees on that first section that we went through. So you have a beautiful setup which inspired me so much. So that is my dream garden homestead, is a garden full of fruit trees.
Question 4. If you didn't live in South Africa, where would you choose to live?
Sure, Dawn, the questions are getting harder and harder, because that is a very difficult question. Anywhere where it's tropical. The reason being is that you can grow more stuff. In my climate, summers don't get as hot as where I was brought up in KZN on the coast. They get very hot, and the humidity is really bad there. So sometimes it's not nice to grow certain crops there. And also in Durban, you don't get frost. You probably will get a month of winter there, and that is basically it. It is a very nice climate to live in. But in Johannesburg, you get really cold winters, and they last forever, like 3 to 3.5 months long. And we get frost, and we get really cold weather. And in summer, it kind of like varies. Like we do have hot summers, but the humidity is not there, not like Cyprus. So Cyprus reminds me a lot of KZN, but the humidity gets a little bit worse in Cyprus. But I would choose a tropical place to live. And funny enough, my partner had actually asked me that exact question about a few days back. And I couldn't really answer it. It was a difficult one. But I would, if I had to go abroad, I would choose maybe Florida. I know Florida has beautiful climates where you can grow the most amazing stuff. Maybe Panama because my partner's family lives there. But yeah, that's a hard one. I would definitely choose a tropical place, climate where they don't get a lot of frost.
Question 5. Any future plans in any respect?
No, not right now. The only thing is that I'm concentrating on building the homestead to create something a little bit better. In the beginning of the year, we had a really bad hailstorm, which really damaged a lot of my crops. And to try and start again in the middle of summer, basically just set me back. So a lot of my crops actually got damaged because of that. So the future plans on my side is trying to fix my homestead to prevent any disasters in the future, to create my hothouse. I want to make it a fixed feature here, like put it on bricks, make some doors so that I don't have it open like this, and then put some windows in it. So it's another project. I love projects. I've got a lot of collaborations that came in this year, which I was busy with last year. They finally came in, so you'll see a lot of collaborations coming in regarding certain things that is happening, products. And then I think the most exciting news is that I will be coming across to Cyprus hopefully this year. My ticket is booked for August, and I'm hoping to come and visit you and Mike because I really enjoyed my time there, just going around the homestead. And I just want to see after a year how it's actually planned out, you know, all your new projects that you also were setting up there. But because of the situation happening in the world today, I'm not sure if I'm able to fly out in August. I might have to rebook my ticket, which the next available slot would be in December. And if the situation is still bad where I still can't fly out, my visit will be in August next year. But right now, according to my agent, my ticket is still available for August, and there is flights, but I will definitely let you know. So that's about all my future plans that I have at the moment.
This next section is all about growing. Question 6. What is something you don't grow, but you would really love to grow?
Oh, I like this question. So as I mentioned, I'm not really in a tropical climate. Johannesburg is inland, and the heat and the humidity that is needed to grow some crops that I would like, well, it's impossible. But the one that I actually succeeded, and a lot of people in Johannesburg were like, how did you do that? I don't even know how I did it. Maybe it's because I talk to my plants and I spend a lot of time really taking care of my homestead. So I believe in connecting with nature, and I believe in talking to my plants, and I'm a kind of person that likes to play music. So like if I'm gardening and I'm tidying up, I'll have some music playing in the background. But the crop that I was able to actually grow in Johannesburg is bananas. Even my partner was like, that is unheard of. And the first time was, I think it was last year, and I just saw a bell hanging on a banana plant, and we just grew the banana plant because I like the look, and you know, it was working, it was growing, but we weren't expecting the fruits. And it gave us a bunch, like a big bunch of bananas, like a few bunches. And it happened again this year. On the other side, in the front of our house, we just put another banana plant, a different variety, and it gave us some bananas, some beautiful bananas. I'll try to put it on the screen here for you. And then you have a mother and you have a daughter, and the daughter threw out bananas as well. So I'm not sure if that will manage to mature because we are in autumn, it's getting colder. So I'm not sure if that is going to even develop. But that first batch, I actually managed to do it again. And I don't know how I did it, but bananas is something I've been wanting to grow. I've managed that. Some other plants is things like avo. So you get really beautiful avos, and the butter avo is amazing. And you get little avos that are creamy that you can actually grow in pots apparently, but not in Johannesburg. I've had an avo in a pot for nearly 5-6 years. It has not grown, and it doesn't look like it's going to grow. It looks sad every single season. And then I've done a bit of research on it, and yeah, Johannesburg is really hard to grow avos. Where I lived and grew up in KZN, there was avos in nearly everybody's gardens, and on the side of the roads. That and mango is really easy to grow there because of the climate. Johannesburg, a little bit harder. So yeah, it's bananas and it's avos that I would love to grow, but unfortunately the avos I can't.
Question 7. If somebody didn't grow anything but would like to get into growing, what are the first 3 things you would suggest for them to grow, and why?
So the 3 easy beginner crops that I would suggest would be beans, but the climbing beans is what I'm talking about. And the more you harvest from it, the more it produces. And for a beginner to experience that just motivates them. So beans is number 1. Second one is lettuce. Lettuce is a very simple crop. And once you harvest it from the outside, it will continue growing from the middle. That also inspires homesteaders to want to grow that crop because it's just an awesome experience growing something from a seed and able to harvest from it and eat from it. So lettuce. And then the third one is spinach. Spinach to me is a crop that you can just cut up, put it in a stir fry, or I like to make scrambled eggs and throw spinach in that with some tomatoes. And it's also very easy. So you grow it and you also harvest it from the outside. And it will keep on producing. To me, spinach is a crop that doesn't die off. I have some spinaches in my raised beds that I've had for a couple of years, and it's still doing well. Not only does all of these crops that I've mentioned feed me and my household, but it's things that I can also share with my animals that we do have here at the homestead.
Question 8. If for some reason there was only one thing you could continue to grow and nothing else, what would be that one thing and why?
I'm going to give you 2 answers for that. One for fruits and one for actual crops. And then I'll choose which one between. So for crops, I think I will choose potatoes. Yeah, potatoes because it's a stable crop. And also when you put one potato in and it gives you a whole bucket full of potatoes. You can always take a few of these potatoes and also put it in buckets for it to produce more potatoes. So in that way, I will never ever starve. If it's the only thing I had to choose on this planet, I will always have potatoes. And you can also plant your potatoes in different times, twice in a year, if I'm not mistaken. Why I chose potatoes is because I love potatoes. I can make chips, fried chips. I can make crispy chips, mashed potatoes, baked potato, boiled potatoes, and I can just add whatever I want with that. So I think potatoes would be my stable crop to grow and choose. So for the fruit trees, that's a hard one because I love fruits and I love what I'm growing. But if I have to choose one, it's my tamarilla. I've just released a video showing everybody the fruit trees that I've grown during summer, and I give you my top fruit trees, and I also give you the number one fruit tree that I enjoyed growing and the taste of it, and that was the tamarilla. Not only can you eat the tamarilla fresh like that or chill it, you can make jams out of it. I've not gone that route, but that is something I would love. But also, it gives you fruits throughout the season of summer. So you'll pick some and it will throw out some more flowers and give you another batch of fruits, and you'll pick that and it will continue until your very first frost.
Question 9. What fruit or vegetable do you consider to be the most versatile or productive in produce?
Well, according to the facts, the veggies that is high in that would be your tomatoes and your zucchini. And for the fruits, it's banana and strawberries, believe it or not. I actually thought it would be the potato, but it's not. It is the zucchini and tomatoes. And then for the fruits, it's the banana and strawberries. So that was something that I actually learned.
This final section I would like to call inspiration. Question 10. What do you consider to be the most important when planning a garden or growing on a new homestead?
That is a really good question. And as I said, I've just done a course video that is coming out, but I also explained it in some previous videos that I've got on YouTube. So number one is definitely monitor the sun before setting up your homestead. Number two is make sure you know what kind of soil you're working with. My first year of homesteading, besides planting it in the wrong location, was putting it directly into my ground. And I have clay soil. So what was happening is that my roots were getting suffocated. There was no air that was able to get to the roots. And so either my plants were dying or they were stagnant. They weren't growing at all. So make sure that you have the correct soil. So if it's clay soil, sandy soil, loomy soil, you can amend your soil. So in my case, it would have taken more than 3 years to amend my clay soil, and I didn't have 3 years. I wanted to start homesteading today. So I opted for raised beds, and that is why I have everything in raised beds. Also, remember that when it rains, see where the water gathers, because that is the third obstacle that I had to learn, is that where I've set up my homestead, a lot of water collects and it can get about that deep to about that deep, depending on how severe the rain is. And raised beds has really saved my homestead a few times. So these are the main things that I would say: sun, location, and your soil.
Question 11. Share any recycle or reuse ideas you have for gardening.
Okay, awesome. So reused things that I use in my garden, and I actually think I'll take the camera and show you guys. That's a better idea. So if we come over here, Dawn, you'll see that I have some Coke bottles that I've just cut the bottoms off, and I stuck them around my seedlings. So what was happening is that in my seedling tray, there was something that was eating all my baby leaves of my cabbage. And this is my Chinese cabbage, which I'm trying to grow. So I had already done some seedlings. They were growing. I came back the next day to check up on it, and all the leaves were eaten. So I've put a second batch of cabbage seedlings in, and I saw the same thing happening. So before all the leaves were munched on, I took them out, I replanted them in my raised beds, and I put some domes over it. So what happens here is that these guys will act as a biodome. You can see all the condensation moisture inside, and all of my seedlings seem to be doing perfect, and they are protected by whatever was eating them. And I think I planted that, and then I planted some other cabbage there, and I want to see if anything eats it. I planted 2 more there, and something's definitely eating my carrots as well. So it has been really difficult, and this is just going to really help me and take the lids off so that there is some oxygen in there, and it's working perfectly. Another thing I recycle is, so when you go to the shops and you actually buy seedlings, you get them in these plastic things. Don't really like throwing them away because we all know where plastic ends up, and this is not recyclable plastic. But what I do is that I try and collect as much as I can, and you can see I've got some there, and I make my own seedlings. So I put some beautiful compost in it, and I put the seeds that I've got, and I just reuse all of these instead of putting them in pots like this. And that way it really does help me to grow a whole bunch of things. Another thing I recycle or use is if you've got 2-liter Coke bottles or Sprite bottles and that, we've got these little lids that screw onto the bottles, and I use them as watering cans. So this really does work really well. The Dawn over here, I have some fabric bags that you can see. I have a whole bunch of sweet potatoes. This is a shop called Woolworths that we have here in South Africa. It is equivalent to a Marks and Spencer that you guys have there in Cyprus and in the UK. So they are a very Lani shop, and they now, instead of using plastic, has gone fabric. And when you go to the shops, if you don't bring your Woolies bag, you have to purchase another one. So you can see that I've collected from a few friends and family, and ones that I had, a few woolly bags where I've repurposed. I've gone and put soil in it, and I'm growing sweet potatoes. And this is great because what happens is that when you water it, the water can still leak out and air can still go in because of the fabric. It's woven to allow air. So it is something that I absolutely love.
Question 12. Share your best tip or hack for gardeners.
Okay, so if you guys get toilet rolls, you can actually use your toilet rolls and put soil and a seed and use that as a container. So that is something I also like using. I guess that's also a recyclable thing for you, Dawn, for the question before. But yeah, that's a nice garden hack. And then once it actually has sprouted and it's about I think about, say, 5 centimeters. When it has its true leaves, take that whole cardboard container and make a hole and put it straight into your pots or in your raised beds. And that is something I love doing, especially with watermelon and squash and butternut and pumpkins and things like that. So another one is if you take the 2 liter Coke bottles that I showed you, and instead of using it as watering cans, I go and make very small holes around there, holes big enough for the water to drip out of the bottle. I go and dig a hole big enough for that 2 liter bottle to fit in, and I leave the nozzle about that high above the ground, and then I close it up and I go and put water in there. And what that's going to do is slowly release water to my crops. That is just a easy way if you can't afford a system to put in your garden to water your homestead. Another thing is, and it's something I actually love doing, is that sometimes we've got some PVC pipes around the house, or even you can use a Coke bottle, and I make biggish holes, and I also bury that into the ground, and I put kitchen scraps in there. And what you'll find is that the worms will come through the holes, eat all the waste, and then go back out into the soil. And you just keep on topping your little container with veggie scraps, food scraps, anything organic, where the worms can come, eat, and then go back into the soil to do their business.
Question 13. What quote, saying, or tagline sums up what your channel is all about?
So I actually have a quote that I sometimes say at the end of my videos, and my quote is, let's learn together as we grow together. Because as a homesteader, I had to learn how to homestead some way, and I failed so many times. I think I have more fails than successes when I got started. And now that I'm at a stage where I understand homesteading a little bit better than where I was 5, 6 years ago, I like to teach it to other people so that if they're starting their journey, they know that we can learn together as we grow together.
Question 14. If you had to change your channel name, what would it now be called?
That's a hard one. So in the beginning, when I decided to go into YouTube and I had to look for a name for my channel, urban homesteading, suburban homesteading, and that was already taken. So I had to think of another name. So I think I would want to choose a name where that in 10 years time, if I have grown from a small urban homestead to a bigger one, that the name will still fit. Right now it's the Small Urban Greens Homestead, and 10 years down the line it might not be the Small Urban Greens Homestead, but I still want to teach people how to grow in a small area. That is my niche. Urban homesteading at its best. Let's learn to grow. Yeah, that's a very difficult one, but yeah, it has to do with something worth learning, urban or suburban, and homesteading.
Question 15. End this video with your most inspiring statement.
You don't need acres of land to grow something. Just need the motivation, and you just need to get started. So yeah, go take a look at my videos. I motivate people to start growing even if they don't have a garden. You have a kitchen, you have a windowsill, and all you have to do is start like I started, in little container pots. Even if you get little tins and you make drainage holes at the bottom, you fill it with soil and you plant something. grow some herbs, a beautiful flower in there, but just get started, because once you've grown these, you would want to find space to grow some more stuff. And if you have a patio, all you need is a few pots along the wall just to get going and start with these 3 basic easy crops that I shared with you. So that is my motivation. You don't need acres of land. You just need the decision to start.
So thank you again, Sammy, for your wonderful questions. I hope you enjoyed doing my questions as much as I enjoyed doing you. And so glad to hear I'm going to see you again very soon, visiting me back in Cyprus.
So Dawn, thank you so much for these questions. They were perfect questions, and really it does touch what I am doing here at my homestead, and that people can now get to know me a little bit more.
Don't forget, anyone watching, to hit the thumbs up and subscribe to both channels and share these inspirational channels. Until next time, Meraki.
So if you guys haven't visited Dawn's channel, please go over there. It's absolutely motivating. I've been to Dawn's homestead and it is absolutely beautiful. So if you've not seen that video, go check that video out, where I go and make a trip to Cyprus. I go visit her beautiful homestead and see what she's growing there. And thank you so much, Dawn, for the Q&A, and I will see you guys all in the next video.